A cold dawn breaks over a sleeping suburb, casting long blue shadows across frosted lawns and dormant gardens. High above the asphalt, perched on the rusted arm of a streetlight, a solitary Eurasian jay sits perfectly still. Its icy blue-winged coverts catch the first pale ray of sunlight, but its head is turned downward, fixed on a human stepping out of a back door with a bag of sunflower seeds. To the untrained eye, this is merely a wild creature waiting for a handout, driven by the simple, raw urge of hunger. Science once agreed with this view. For over a century, orthodox biology classified avian minds as biological automatons, creatures bound entirely to the immediate present, locked inside a rigid loop of instinct and immediate stimulus. Animals live in the now, the textbooks claimed, unable to mentally travel back to yesterday or plan for the light of tomorrow. That long-held doctrine is quietly crumbling on your back deck. As the human leaves a small pile of food on a wooden table and steps back inside, the jay drops from its perch. It moves with deliberate, calculated precision. It does not simply consume the meal. Instead, it selects a single, flawless acorn, lifts it in its heavy black beak, and takes flight toward a nearby oak forest. Deep within the shadows of the canopy, the bird alights upon a patch of damp soil covered in decaying pine needles. It carefully presses the seed beneath the earth, sweeps a couple of dry leaves over the disturbance, and steps back to survey its work. This is not a mindless reflex triggered by autumn chill. It is an act of deliberate architecture. To understand what is truly happening beneath those glossy feathers, we must dismantle our own anthropocentric biases about memory. When a human recalls a birthday party from childhood or imagines what they will wear next week, neuroscientists call this mental time travel, the capacity of episodic memory to step outside the current moment. For decades, this self-aware, flexible projection into time was considered the exclusive domain of the human brain, dependent on our massive, highly structured cerebral cortex. Birds possessing tiny brains devoid of a neocortex were deemed evolutionary lightweights, incapable of such cognitive sophistication. Yet hidden inside the avian telencephalon lies an alternative evolutionary masterpiece, the Nidapallium avianum. Compact, densely packed with neurons, and wired for hyper-efficient processing, this neural engine allows birds to achieve complex cognition through an entirely different structural blueprint. Consider the spatial scale of the challenge. A single scrub jay or European magpie can cache up to 30,000 individual food items across hundreds of square kilometers in a single season. Months later, under a blanketing sheet of winter snow that completely alters the visual landscape, the bird returns. It does not search randomly. It drops straight through the snowdrift directly onto the exact spot where a single nut was buried half a year prior, achieving an accuracy rate exceeding 90%. That feat alone shatters basic theories of simple spatial association. But field experiments have revealed something far more unsettling. The bird does not just remember where it hid the food, it remembers what it hid, when it hid it, and who was watching while it did so. In controlled laboratory trials, researchers presented Western scrub jays with two distinct types of food, perishable waxworms and non-perishable peanuts. The birds quickly cached both items in separate locations across a tray filled with sand. When allowed to recover their stores after a short 4-hour delay, the jays went straight for the soft, highly prized waxworms. But when the recovery period was deliberately extended to 120 hours, long enough for the waxworms to decay and become unpalatable, the jays completely ignored their insect caches. They went directly for the durable peanuts instead. Pause to absorb the implications of that behavior. To make that choice, the bird's mind had to construct a multidimensional mental matrix. It had to cross-reference a specific location with a specific item quality, and then update that information against an internal clock, measuring the passage of absolute time. It knew that the worms had rotted, even though it could not see, smell, or taste them from across the room. The bird was replaying a specific past event in its mind, projecting its current state into the future, and making a rational, predictive decision based on the decay rate of organic matter. This is episodic-like memory in its purest form, a mental time travel machine operating inside a skull no larger than a walnut. The mystery deepens when we introduce social context into this temporal equation. Birds do not cache their food in a vacuum. They operate within a dense competitive matrix of watchful eyes. Out on a sun-dappled forest edge, a raven holding a piece of suet on a mossy branch will suddenly freeze, its dark obsidian eye tracking another raven perched 50 meters away in the shadows of an evergreen tree. The caching bird calculates the angle of sight. It understands what the observer can and cannot see behind a thick trunk. If the cached food is hidden under the gaze of a rival, the caching raven will wait until the competitor turns away. Or, more cunningly, it will perform a fake cache, shoving its beak into the dirt, pretending to drop the morsel, covering the empty hole, and then flying off with the food still tucked secretly beneath its tongue. This is not simple instinct, it is tactical deception. It requires an individual to project itself into the mind of another creature, to model what that rival knows, and to predict how that rival will act in the future based on present observations. The bird is running complex simulations of future outcomes, adjusting its present behavior to manipulate a future reality that has not yet occurred. Every morning in our suburban yards and city parks, a silent, invisible chess match is being played out across the fence lines. The blue jays, crows, and chickadees hovering near our feeders are not just searching for calories to burn today. They are actively mapping our habits, recording our routines, and calculating the risks of tomorrow. They remember which human leaves seeds, which human walks a dog, and which window remains closed until noon. They are storing precise data points in an internal temporal ledger, building a comprehensive blueprint of a future we have not yet even begun to live. To fully comprehend how far these avian minds can project into the future, we must look beyond the immediate search for food and examine how they navigate the landscape of human threat. Time travel, after all, is not merely about securing a meal for tomorrow. It is about ensuring biological survival across years, decades, and generations. On a rainy university campus, a researcher steps onto the wet concrete wearing a grotesque latex caveman mask. In his hands, he carries a net. Years earlier, a brief single encounter occurred on this very lawn. Scientists wearing that specific rubber mask trapped, banded, and released a small group of wild American crows. The physical handling lasted only minutes, leaving no permanent physical mark. Yet, as the masked figure walks beneath the towering elm trees today, the canopy erupts into a deafening chorus of harsh, guttural scolds. Glossy black wings cut through the gray mist as dozens of crows converge from all directions. They do not just fly away in fear, they aggressively dive-bomb the latex face, sweeping past within inches of the intruder's hair. What makes this behavior extraordinary is not simply that the birds remembered a single human face. It is that the vast majority of the crows taking part in this tactical mobbing were not even born when the original trapping occurred. This is the famous Seattle mask experiment, and its findings exposed a profound cognitive mechanism: cultural generational memory. The original crows had recorded the specific features of the threatening human face: the broad brow, the square jaw, the pale skin, and stored that visual data in the deep neural circuits of their archipallium. In the days that followed, whenever the masked human reappeared, the original birds sounded a specialized, pulsed alarm call while mobbing the threat. Young fledglings, watching from the safety of pine branches, observed the specific target of their parents' fury. They linked that visual profile directly to an existential danger. The elders were not just reacting, they were actively teaching. They were passing a specific historical record across the generational divide, encoding a past event into the future survival strategy of birds that had never experienced the original trauma. Decades later, long after the original wild crows have died, their great-grandchildren continue to recognize and attack that same rubber mask. The memory has survived the death of the individual, living on as a persistent ghost in the collective consciousness of the flock. To encode a complex human face, track its movements across years, and project that threat decades into the unknown requires a brain capable of profound synaptic plasticity. Inside the avian hyperpallium, specialized visual processing areas analyze high-resolution features at speed rates far exceeding our own vision. Where a human sees a continuous blur, a crow parses light at up to 80 flashes per second, taking in fine details: subtle wrinkles around an eye, an uneven stride, or the faint scent of leather gloves. They are building detailed dossiers on us. In crowded urban parks, house sparrows and feral pigeons meticulously chart individual human faces, categorizing people into distinct behavioral buckets: the seed thrower, the predictable jogger, and the aggressive child with a stick. If a benign human suddenly changes their clothes or puts on a dark winter coat, the birds are not fooled. They cross-reference facial geometry, posture, and gait, holding that mental record constant despite dramatic external changes. This ability to project human intent across time transforms urban birds from passive inhabitants of our concrete cities into active intelligence gatherers. They are constantly adjusting their daily flight paths, nesting locations and foraging times around the predicted schedules of their human neighbors. Consider the intricate strategy of the New Caledonian crow. In the humid rainforests of the South Pacific, this gray-feathered strategist selects a stiff leaf of the pandanus plant. Using its sharp beak as a precision cutting tool, it tears away strip after strip, creating a stepped, serrated probe designed to extract beetle grubs from deep within rotting tree trunks. This process is not trial and error. The crow holds an abstract mental template of the tool in its head before it even touches the leaf. It manufactures the hook, tests its flexibility against a branch, and if the tool snaps, it adjusts its manufacturing technique for the next attempt. The bird is holding a future concept in its mind, manipulating raw materials in the present to achieve a specific mechanical goal that exists only in its prospective imagination. Furthermore, these birds preserve their tools. After a successful hunt, a crow does not simply drop its crafted wooden probe onto the forest floor. It tucks the tool carefully into a hollow knot of wood or under a loop of vine, stashing it safely for later use. It anticipates that it will be hungry again hours from now, and it values the labor required to build the instrument. It is investing in its own future efficiency. When we synthesize these discoveries, the multi-layered spatial mapping, the precise tracking of food degradation rates, the tactical deception of rivals, the cross-generational transmission of grudges, and the prospective manufacturing of tools, a radical new picture of avian life emerges. Birds do not move through the world trapped in a perpetual now, blindly reacting to the rustle of a leaf or the sudden chill of autumn wind. They are temporal navigators, constantly moving backward and forward along a fluid mental timeline. They pull high-resolution snapshots from the past, overlay them onto the immediate present, and run predictive simulations to master the challenges of tomorrow. The next time you walk down a quiet suburban street and hear the dry, rhythmic rasp of a raven overhead, look up into those dark, piercing eyes. You are not simply looking at a wild animal hunting for scraps. You are being observed by a mind that has already calculated your path, recorded your face, and integrated your existence into its master blueprint of the future.